I am Hannah, 27 years old, and the black sheep of the Montgomery family. While they cruise through life in designer clothes and luxury cars, I teach kindergarten in a public school. At my grandfather William's funeral last month, everyone received millions in assets while I got a small envelope containing a plane ticket to Monaco. As they celebrated their windfall, my mother leaned over with a cold smile. "Guess your grandfather didn't love you that much," she laughed. If you have ever felt like the forgotten one in your family, let me know where you are watching from and subscribe to see what happened when I decided to follow this mysterious plane ticket. The Montgomery name has been synonymous with wealth in New York real estate circles for 3 generations. My grandfather William built an empire of commercial properties across Manhattan, eventually expanding to luxury residential developments in Miami, Los Angeles, and London. Our family estate in the Hamptons spans 20 acres, with a 12-bedroom main house where family gatherings feel more like networking events than actual reunions. Growing up in this environment, I always felt like I was wearing someone else's clothes, too tight, too flashy, and never quite right. While my siblings Alexander and Victoria obsessed over stock portfolios before they could drive, I rescued stray cats and volunteered at homeless shelters. My mother, Stephanie, a former beauty queen turned socialite, viewed my compassionate interests as embarrassing quirks that I would eventually outgrow. My father, Richard, who served as the company's CFO, barely noticed me unless I was causing what he called unnecessary complications to the family image. Only grandfather William seemed to see me differently. During summer breaks, when I was between 8 and 16 years old, William would take me to his villa in Monaco. Those weeks became the brightest spots of my childhood. While my parents shipped Alexander and Victoria to prestigious business camps, William taught me to value experiences over possessions. "The thing about money, little Hannah," he would say as we watched the sunset from his terrace, "is that it only matters if you use it to create something meaningful." We spent our days sailing in the Mediterranean, him teaching me to navigate by stars when the modern equipment was available but unnecessary. Always learn the fundamental skills, Hannah. Technology fails, but knowledge stays with you. In the evenings, we played chess on a marble set he had commissioned from a local artist. He never let me win, believing that earned victory was the only kind worth having. When I finally beat him after 4 summers of trying, he opened a bottle of sparkling apple cider and toasted me with genuine pride. Our shared love of art took us through every museum in Monaco and beyond. William knew the stories behind each painting, often sharing perspectives that contradicted the official museum narratives. "Always look deeper than what people tell you to see," he advised. As I grew older and began considering career paths, the first fractures in our relationship appeared. The family expectation was clear: business school, followed by a position in Montgomery properties. When I announced my decision to pursue education, instead, the family reaction was swift and harsh. My mother called it a waste of potential. My father deemed it financially irresponsible, and my siblings simply stopped, including me in their conversations about the future. William's response was more complex. During our last meaningful conversation before his death, sitting in his Manhattan office with the city skyline stretching behind him, his disappointment was evident but tempered with something else. "You have chosen a difficult path, Hannah," he said, his voice gravelly from the illness that would eventually take him. "Not because teaching is harder than business, though in many ways it is, but because you have chosen to walk away from what everyone expected. That takes courage." He paused, then looking at me with an intensity I could not fully interpret. "I built this company to provide for my family, to give you all opportunities. Sometimes I wonder if I gave too much of the wrong things." That conversation was 3 years ago. As I established my career as a kindergarten teacher at a public school in Brooklyn, the invitations to family events grew less frequent. When they did come, the interactions became increasingly strained. Alexander was being groomed to take over as CEO, Victoria had become the marketing director, and I was the family anomaly who lived in a 1-bedroom apartment and worked with finger paints. The guilt over not visiting William more during his final months still weighs on me. Between teaching responsibilities and the emotional drain of family interactions, I made only brief visits to the hospital. Each time, he seemed to have more machines attached to him and fewer words to share. The last time I saw him conscious, he squeezed my hand and whispered Monaco with a slight smile. I assumed he was reliving memories in his morphine haze. My mother maintained her perfect appearance throughout William's illness. Designer outfits never wrinkled during her precisely timed hospital visits that always occurred when board members or important business associates would be present. My father buried himself in work, claiming that keeping the company stable during this transition is what William would want. Alexander and Victoria divided their time between hospital photo opportunities for social media and meetings with the company lawyers. The Montgomery family does not grieve, they strategize. William's funeral transformed our family estate into a business convention. Over 400 people filled the grounds: politicians whose campaigns benefited from Montgomery donations, celebrities who lived in Montgomery properties, and business elites whose partnerships had strengthened the company. Under a massive white tent on the back lawn, elaborate flower arrangements surrounded a mahogany casket that cost more than my annual salary. I stood apart from the practiced grief around me. My mother dabbed at dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief while simultaneously instructing the catering staff about champagne service. My father conducted business in whispered conversations behind funeral programs. Alexander and Victoria positioned themselves strategically for photographs with influential attendees, their black designer mourning clothes impeccably tailored. "Your grandfather would be pleased with the turnout," my mother said, appearing beside me with an air of satisfaction. "The governor is here, and 3 senators." "I think he would have preferred fewer people who actually knew him," I replied. Her smile tightened. "Always the idealist, Hannah. This is about respect and position, something you never quite understood." After the burial and reception, the family and closest business associates gathered in the estate's grand library for the reading of the will. The room with its 30-foot ceilings and walls of leather-bound books had always intimidated me as a child. Today, seated in one of the antique chairs, arranged in a semicircle before the massive desk, I felt like an imposter awaiting exposure. Mr. Rothwell, the family attorney who had served the Montgomerys for over 30 years, adjusted his spectacles and began the proceedings. His voice, cultivated through expensive education and decades of legal precision, filled the wood-paneled room with the distribution of a fortune. "To my daughter Stephanie and her husband Richard I, leave the Manhattan penthouse on Park Avenue valued at $20 million, along with its contents." My mother's smile remained modest as she squeezed my father's hand. They had been anticipating this particular property. "To Richard Montgomery, I leave 30% of the voting shares in Montgomery Properties, with the expectation that he will continue to serve as chief financial officer until retirement." My father nodded solemnly, though I noticed a flicker of disappointment. He had likely expected a controlling share. "To my grandson Alexander Montgomery, I leave my collection of yachts currently docked in Miami, New York, and Monaco valued at approximately $25 million, as well as 20% of Montgomery Properties shares." Alexander attempted to look surprised rather than triumphant. "To my granddaughter Victoria Montgomery, I leave my art collection valued at $15 million, the London apartment, and 15% of Montgomery Properties shares." Victoria actually clapped before composing herself with a demure smile. The distribution continued to extended family members and key employees. Uncle Thomas received the vacation home in Aspen. Aunt Patricia got the horse farm in Kentucky. Cousin James was given the vintage car collection. Senior executives received generous stock options and cash bonuses. Throughout the proceedings, I sat quietly, expecting nothing, yet hoping for some small acknowledgement of the bond I had shared with William. As Mr. Rothwell neared the end of the document, my stomach tightened with each name called that was not mine. And finally, Mr. Rothwell said, his voice changing slightly as he looked up from the papers to my granddaughter Hannah Montgomery. The room seemed to collectively hold its breath. Family members exchanged glances, some curious, others smug. "I leave a first-class plane ticket to Monaco to be used within 1 month of my passing." Mr. Rothwell removed a small envelope from his briefcase and walked across the room to hand it to me. The weight of dozens of eyes followed him, and the subsequent silence felt suffocating. "That is all," he concluded, returning to the desk. The silence broke with my mother's laugh, sharp and dismissive. "Guess your grandfather didn't love you that much, Hannah," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Though I suppose a little vacation might be nice on a teacher's salary." Heat rushed to my face as polite laughter rippled through the room. I clutched the envelope with white knuckles, fighting back tears that threatened to confirm their perception of my weakness. "Well, that concludes our official business," my father announced, standing to address the room. Please join us for drinks on the terrace. As people filed out, I remained seated, staring at the small envelope in my hands. The thick cream paper bore my name in William's distinctive handwriting. Something about this felt deliberate rather than dismissive, yet the humiliation burned nonetheless. Miss Montgomery, Mr. Rothwell said, quietly approaching me as the room emptied. Your grandfather was a man who valued certain qualities that are not always apparent to others. His expression remained professionally neutral, but something in his eyes suggested knowledge beyond the obvious. What does that mean? I asked. Simply that plane tickets can lead to unexpected destinations. He nodded formally and collected his papers. Safe travels should you decide to use it. As I left the library, I passed the terrace where my family was already celebrating their windfall. Victoria was describing her plans to loan the art collection to prestigious museums as a tax strategy, while Alexander detailed the yacht upgrades he was considering. No one acknowledged my presence as I walked to my car, the envelope burning in my purse like a shameful secret. My apartment in Brooklyn felt especially small that night as I paced the limited floor space between my secondhand furniture. The plane ticket lay on my coffee table, mocking me with its luxurious first-class designation and one-way nature. Monaco. Of all places, he had chosen the location of our happiest memories together. I picked up the ticket again, running my fingers over the embossed airline logo. First class to Nice, France, the closest international airport to Monaco, departing in 3 weeks. A one-way ticket with no return date specified. What was I supposed to do there? How long was I expected to stay? And more importantly, why had William chosen this strange bequest instead of something practical? My salary as a kindergarten teacher provided a comfortable, if modest life, but an extended stay in one of the world's most expensive locations would quickly deplete my savings. Part of me wanted to tear up the ticket out of pride. Another part remembered the way William had whispered Monaco during our last meeting, as if passing along a secret message I had failed to decipher. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old photos from those summer trips. 10-year-old me standing proudly next to William on his sailboat, my hair wild from the Mediterranean winds. 14-year-old me concentrating fiercely across the chess table, from him the Monaco sunset gilding the marble pieces. 16-year-old me and William sitting at his favorite cafe near the harbor, sharing a plate of pastries as he explained the history of the principality with the enthusiasm of a natural teacher. In each photo, his eyes held the same expression when looking at me, a mixture of affection and expectation, as if waiting for me to discover something important. The memory of my mother's cutting remark at the funeral still stung. Guess your grandfather didn't love you that much. But the evidence of our relationship contradicted her assessment. William had spent more genuine time with me than with any other family member. While he had given the others material wealth, perhaps he had something different in mind for me. The next morning, I requested 2 weeks of unpaid leave from my school principal, extending beyond my scheduled spring break. She was understanding, having lost her own father the previous year. Take the time you need, Hannah. The children will be here when you get back. My decision made, I packed enough clothes for a 2-week stay and budgeted my savings for modest accommodations. If nothing else, the trip would allow me to say goodbye to William in the place where our relationship had flourished. The day before my departure, my mother called her first contact since the funeral. Your brother mentioned you are actually going to Monaco, she said, without greeting. What exactly do you expect to find there? I am not sure, I answered honestly. But grandfather wanted me to go for a reason. Hannah, always living in a fantasy world, she sighed dramatically. William was old and sentimental at the end. This is clearly just a nostalgic gesture, not some mysterious treasure hunt. You are wasting your time and what little money you have. Maybe I conceded, but I need to know for sure. Well, do not come asking for help when you run out of funds in a country that charges $20 for coffee, she concluded before hanging up. That evening, Alexander unexpectedly appeared at my apartment door. Unlike Victoria, who had fully embraced our mother's cutting attitude toward me, Alexander occasionally showed glimpses of the brother I had been close to as a child. Heard you are actually going, he said, stepping inside and looking around my apartment with poorly concealed discomfort at its modest furnishings. Tomorrow morning. He nodded, hands in the pockets of his tailored slacks. Grandfather loved that place. Used to disappear there for weeks sometimes, even when there was no obvious business reason. I know. Alexander shifted uncomfortably. Look, Monaco is expensive, and you are. He trailed off, gesturing vaguely at my apartment. A teacher, I supplied. On a limited budget, he finished diplomatically, pulling an envelope from his jacket. Take this. Consider it an advance on future birthday and Christmas presents. Inside was $5,000 in euros. I started to protest, but he raised his hand. This is not charity, Hannah. Something about this whole situation feels intentional. Grandfather never did anything without multiple reasons. Just take it and see what happens. The following morning, I boarded the flight to Nice with a mixture of apprehension and curiosity, settled into the luxurious first-class seat that must have cost more than a month of my salary. I felt conspicuously out of place among business travelers in designer clothes with expensive watches and practiced boredom. The elderly woman seated beside me noticed my nervous fidgeting and smiled kindly. First time in first class, dear. That obvious. Only to those who remember their own first time, she replied. I am Margaret. My late husband and I spent 50 years building a life together, and now I travel to remind myself that the world is still full of wonders without him. Over the Atlantic, Margaret shared wisdom about family that resonated with my situation. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, dear. Sometimes the family we are born into is not the family that truly sees us. After landing in Nice, I navigated through customs and retrieved my single suitcase. The April air carried the scent of the Mediterranean as I exited the airport, instantly triggering memories of summers with William. Standing in the arrival area was a slender man in a crisp uniform, holding a sign with my name, Hannah Montgomery. Confusion washed over me. I had not arranged for transportation, planning instead to take the public bus to Monaco to save money. Excuse me, I approached cautiously. I am Hannah Montgomery, but I did not request a driver. The man, perhaps in his 40s, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes, smiled warmly. Mademoiselle Montgomery, welcome. I am Pierre. Your grandfather arranged for me to meet you. My grandfather. But he passed away last month. Monsieur William made these arrangements 6 months ago. He was most insistent that when you arrived, you should be properly welcomed. Pierre took my suitcase with a graceful efficiency. The car is this way. As I followed him to a sleek black Mercedes, questions multiplied in my mind. Whatever William had planned went beyond a simple nostalgic gesture. He had anticipated my arrival long before his death, preparing for a journey he would not live to see. Pierre drove with the confident precision of someone who had navigated Monaco's winding coastal roads thousands of times. As the principality came into view, nestled between mountains and sea, familiar landmarks triggered an avalanche of memories. William spoke of you often, Pierre said, as we climbed the hills above Monte Carlo. He said you had an artist's eyes in a world of accountants. You knew my grandfather well. For 20 years, I was his driver whenever he visited. But more than that, I would like to think we were friends. He caught my gaze in the rearview mirror. He was not the same man here as he perhaps was in New York. Instead of turning toward the luxury hotels of Monte Carlo or the exclusive Larvotto beach area where I had expected we might be headed, Pierre continued up into the hills until we reached a residential area of La Turbie overlooking Monaco. He stopped before a coral-colored Mediterranean villa surrounded by cypress trees and flowering gardens. We have arrived, Mademoiselle Hannah. The villa was modest by Montgomery standards, perhaps 4 bedrooms with a terracotta-tiled roof and blue shutters. A stone path led through the garden to a wooden front door. It was beautiful but understated, nothing like the ostentation my family typically preferred. There must be some mistake, I said. This cannot be a Montgomery property. I would have heard about it. Pierre smiled as he retrieved my suitcase. This is Villa Lumiere. Your grandfather purchased it 25 years ago through a separate corporation. Your family does not know about it. Before I could process this information, the front door opened and an elegant woman in her 60s emerged. Her silver hair was pulled back in a simple chignon, and she wore a blue linen dress with a white apron. Isabella has managed the villa for as long as I have driven for your grandfather, Pierre explained. She is expecting you. Isabella greeted me with the formal warmth of a professional who had been given explicit instructions. Mademoiselle Hannah, welcome to Villa Lumiere. Everything is prepared as your grandfather requested. The interior of the villa was awash with Mediterranean light through large windows framing spectacular views of Monaco and the sea beyond. The decor was elegant but comfortable, handcrafted furniture, local artwork, and bookshelves filled with volumes in multiple languages. Nothing about it suggested the Montgomery aesthetic of obvious wealth and contemporary design. Your grandfather stayed here whenever he visited Monaco, Isabella explained, as she showed me to a bedroom with a private terrace. He called it his true home. I never knew about this place, I said, confused. We always stayed at the Hôtel de Paris when I visited as a child. Isabella nodded. That was for the official visits. This is where he came to be himself. After I had settled in and refreshed from the journey, Isabella served lunch on the main terrace, fresh local fish salad from the garden, and bread still warm from the oven. As I ate, I studied the photographs arranged along the living room wall that were visible through the open doors. Many featured William through different decades of his life, often with local people I did not recognize. To my surprise, there were also numerous photos of me from our summer visits, candid shots I had never seen before. William had those framed after each of your visits, Isabella noted, following my gaze. He was very proud of you. After lunch, she presented me with a sealed envelope. He instructed me to give you this after you had rested from your journey. Inside was a letter written in William's distinctive handwriting. Hannah, asterisk. If you are reading this, I have left this world for whatever adventure comes next. More importantly, it means you have chosen to trust the journey I have laid out for you despite what must have been a painful experience at the reading of my will. For that courage I am grateful but not surprised. Asterisk. Asterisk. You once asked why I brought you to Monaco each summer rather than your siblings. The truth is that in you I recognized a spirit that values the same things I learned too late in life to fully embrace. While the rest of our family measures worth in dollars, you measure it in human connections and experiences. Asterisk. Asterisk. This villa has been my secret sanctuary for 25 years, unknown to the family who would not understand its value. Here, I have lived my true life, while maintaining the William Montgomery they expected in New York. Asterisk. Asterisk. Over the next few days, you will discover pieces of that life. Follow the path I have created for you. It begins tomorrow at 9 a.m. at Café Azur in the old town where Marcel will be expecting you. Show him this letter. Asterisk. Asterisk. Trust the journey, Hannah. Asterisk. Asterisk. With love and faith in you. Asterisk. Asterisk, William. Asterisk. That evening, I explored the villa, discovering a library filled with philosophy and literature, a modest art collection featuring local artists rather than famous names, and a study with a chess set permanently positioned mid-game. In William's bedroom, photographs of a younger William with a beautiful, dark-haired woman I did not recognize sat on the nightstand. Who is this woman with my grandfather? I asked Isabella as she prepared dinner. Ah, that is Juliet, she replied with a soft smile. She was a marine biologist who taught your grandfather about the sea. They were very close for many years until her passing 10 years ago. Was she his? I hesitated to finish the question. His companion, yes. His true love, perhaps. Isabella placed a glass of wine before me. Your grandmother in New York, she was a business arrangement more than a marriage, no. William spoke of this sometimes. This revelation stunned me. I had never heard my grandmother described this way, though it explained the formal coldness I had observed in old family photographs. William built 2 lives, Isabella continued. One for the family business, one for his soul. He said you were the bridge between them. The next morning, I walked down to Monaco's old town, known as Les Rochers, following the directions Isabella had provided. Café Azur was a small establishment with blue awnings and a terrace overlooking the harbor. Several older men played chess at outdoor tables, while tourists and locals mingled over coffee and pastries. As I approached, uncertainly, a heavy-set man with a magnificent mustache looked up from behind the counter and broke into a wide smile. "Ah, Hannah," he exclaimed as if greeting a regular customer. "I would know you anywhere. You have William's eyes." "You must be Marcel," I said, showing him the letter. Oui. William said you would come. He ushered me to a private table in the corner of the terrace. This was his table. Every morning for 30 years, whenever he was in Monaco, he sat here and watched the world with his coffee and pain au chocolat. Marcel brought me the same breakfast and sat down across from me. Now I must tell you about William Montgomery that you do not know. The William who funded the education of 15 local children who could not afford university. The William who anonymously purchased fishing boats for families who lost theirs in the storm of '98. The William who established a foundation for marine conservation in Juliet's name. For the next hour, Marcel shared stories of a grandfather I had glimpsed but never fully known, a man who used his wealth quietly and intentionally, who valued community and conservation, who found purpose beyond profit. And now the next step of your journey, Marcel concluded, presenting me with an old-fashioned key and another envelope. The key is for a special place. The letter will guide you. William's second letter directed me to the Monaco Oceanographic Museum, where the key unlocked a private research room named after Juliette Rousseau. Inside, displays documented her groundbreaking work on Mediterranean marine ecosystems and the conservation foundation William had established with a $10 million endowment that operated entirely separately from Montgomery. Properties. Your grandfather was our most important benefactor, explained Dr. Laurent Dubois, the research director, though he insisted his name never appear in any publications or plaques. He said the work mattered, not the recognition. Dr. Dubois presented me with a USB drive and the next letter. He asked me to give you this when you are ready to understand his greater purpose. From the museum, William's trail led to a small art gallery in Fontvieille, where I discovered he had been quietly supporting local artists for decades, purchasing their work at generous prices and funding scholarships for promising students. The gallery owner, Sophia, had tears in her eyes as she shared stories of William's kindness. He changed so many lives without ever taking credit, she said, handing me another key and the next letter. Each stop revealed another facet of William's secret life, and the extensive community he had built in Monaco, the Children's Hospital, where he had funded a wing for rare disease research, the culinary school, where he had established scholarships for underprivileged students, the environmental organization where he had directed millions towards sustainable fishing initiatives. By late afternoon, I arrived at the Monaco Private Bank, where William's final key opened a secure conference room. The bank manager, Monsieur Fournier, greeted me formally. Your grandfather made arrangements for this meeting 3 years ago, he explained. He was most specific about the timing and circumstances. Inside the conference room, a large screen displayed a paused video image of William sitting in what I recognized as the study at Villa Lumière. Monsieur Fournier discreetly left me alone after starting the recording. William's face came to life on the screen, his expression serious yet peaceful, in a way I had rarely seen during family business meetings. Hannah, my dear granddaughter, if you are watching this, you have followed my breadcrumb trail through Monaco and discovered that your old grandfather led something of a double life. His familiar smile warmed the screen. But what you have seen so far is merely the introduction to why I have brought you here. He shifted in his chair, leaning closer to the camera. 40 years ago, when Montgomery Properties was becoming successful, I began to question the purpose of accumulating wealth that seemed to change my family for the worse. With each million we earned, I watched your grandmother become more isolated in her social climbing, your mother more concerned with appearances than happiness, your father more obsessed with control. William sighed, his eyes reflecting a deep sadness. I created what I thought would be a legacy for my family, only to watch it become a prison of privilege that distorted their values. When you were born, Hannah, I recognized immediately a spirit that reminded me of who I had been before money changed me. I made a decision then to create a separate legacy, one built on purpose rather than profit. He explained how he had systematically channeled portions of his personal wealth into a separate structure of investments, foundations, and properties, completely independent from Montgomery Properties and unknown to the family. Over 30 years, this second portfolio has grown to rival the family business in value, but with a crucial difference: every investment has been made with purpose beyond profit. Sustainable companies, ethical technologies, community development, environmental protection. The result is what I call the true Montgomery legacy, currently valued at approximately $500 million. I gasped at the figure, nearly dropping the water glass I had been sipping from. Now comes the part that explains your plane ticket, Hannah. I have established the William Montgomery Foundation with this money, and as of the moment you walked into this bank, you are its sole director and controller. The villa is yours, as are numerous other properties throughout Europe that generate rental income to support your living expenses. You will have teams of advisors at your disposal, but the decisions about how this legacy continues will be entirely yours. William's expression became more intense. I have given the family exactly what they value: material assets and status symbols. But to you, Hannah, I entrust what I have come to understand is far more valuable: purpose and positive impact. You alone among the Montgomerys see wealth as a responsibility rather than a privilege. The video continued with William explaining the legal structures he had created, the teams of professionals already in place to assist me, and his vision for the foundation's future. You may choose to keep this separate from the family as I did, or you may eventually bring them into this world if you believe they can embrace its values. That decision, like all others regarding the foundation, is yours alone to make. As the video neared its end, William's expression softened. I regret the public humiliation you likely experienced at the will reading. It was a necessary deception to ensure the family would not interfere with your journey of discovery. Remember that true wealth is measured not by what you possess, but by what you put into the world. His final words stayed with me long after the screen went dark. I did not leave you a plane ticket because I loved you less, Hannah. I left you a plane ticket because I loved you more. Monsieur Fournier returned with a team of lawyers and financial advisors who spent the next 2 hours explaining my new role and the extensive resources now at my disposal. The William Montgomery Foundation owned properties throughout Monaco and Europe, held significant stakes in ethical businesses worldwide, and maintained an investment portfolio structured around social and environmental impact. As I walked back to the villa that evening, my mind swirled with the magnitude of what William had entrusted to me. The weight of responsibility felt simultaneously overwhelming, and right as if a puzzle piece had finally clicked into place. At the villa, Isabella had prepared dinner on the terrace. As I picked at my food, still processing the day's revelations, my phone began chiming with notifications. Alexander had texted a screenshot from a Monaco Society Instagram account, showing me entering the Monaco private bank with the caption, "American heiress Hannah Montgomery seen consulting with elite banking team in Monaco." Sources suggest a substantial Montgomery family expansion in the Principality. "What the hell is going on?" Alexander's text read. "Are you somehow involved in business deals we do not know about?" Before I could respond, my mother called. When I answered, her voice was tight with controlled anger. "Hannah, I have just received calls from 3 different board members asking about our Monaco expansion that apparently you are spearheading. What game are you playing?" "It is not a game," I replied, a new confidence in my voice. "I am simply following grandfather's plan." "What plan? What are you talking about? You need to return immediately before you damage the family reputation with whatever stunt you are pulling." "I am not coming back yet," I said, "and when I do, we will have a lot to discuss." Over the next 24 hours, as I continued meeting with foundation staff and learning about William's extensive network in Monaco, the family's concern escalated to alarm. Victoria posted passive-aggressive comments about family loyalty on social media. My father called to express concern about unauthorized use of the Montgomery name in business dealings. Finally, 3 days after my arrival in Monaco, Isabella informed me that a private jet had landed at Nice airport. "Your family has arrived, Mademoiselle Hannah. Pierre says they are on their way to the villa." I waited on the main terrace watching the Mediterranean shimmer below as Pierre's car wound its way up the hillside road. The confidence that had been building in me over the past days solidified into resolve. For the first time in my life, I was standing on ground that was truly mine, not as a Montgomery heiress, but as Hannah chosen for who I was, rather than the family I belonged to. The sleek black Bentley my father preferred pulled into the villa's circular drive. My parents emerged first, followed by Alexander and Victoria. Their expressions ranged from confused anger to suspicious calculation as they took in the beautiful property that had never appeared in any family portfolio review. "Hannah," my mother called out as they approached the terrace, her voice carrying the false warmth she reserved for public appearances. "What an unexpected little hideaway you have discovered." "This is absurd," my father interjected, surveying the property with an appraiser's eye. "William never mentioned a Monaco villa outside the company holdings." There is quite a lot grandfather never mentioned, I replied, gesturing to the seating area where Isabella had arranged refreshments. Please sit down. We have much to discuss. We most certainly do, Victoria snapped, remaining standing. Starting with why you are suddenly meeting with banking executives and being photographed with Monaco's elite when you are supposed to be a kindergarten teacher on a pity vacation. Alexander, more perceptive than the others, had been quietly studying the photographs visible through the open doors to the living room. Hannah, how long has this villa existed, and why are there decades of photos of you and grandfather here when we never knew about it? 42 years, I answered, and that is just the beginning of what you do not know. Over the next hour, I explained William's double life, the vast secret fortune he had built, and my new role as head of his foundation. I showed them documentation of the properties, investments, and initiatives that comprise the true Montgomery legacy. With each revelation, their expressions shifted from disbelief to shock to calculating interest. 500 million, my father repeated, his financial mind, immediately grasping the significance. A completely separate fortune that does not appear in any of the family accounts or holdings. And he left it all to you, my mother asked her, voice tight with controlled outrage. His least accomplished child. His most aligned heir, I corrected. Grandfather built this legacy based on values that the family business does not prioritize. He chose me because I share those values. This is ridiculous, Victoria declared. You have no experience managing this kind of wealth or these business relationships. The foundation should obviously be integrated with Montgomery Properties under proper family management. That would defeat its entire purpose, I replied. This is not about profit maximization or family power. It is about positive impact and ethical stewardship. My father adopted his negotiation posture, leaning forward with feigned reasonableness. Hannah, while this is certainly a surprising development, we need to consider the practical aspects. The Montgomery name has a certain reputation to uphold. Any foundation operating under our name must coordinate with our broader business interests. The foundation is legally separate from Montgomery Properties, I explained. Grandfather ensured that it cannot be absorbed or controlled by the family business. My position as director is legally protected for as long as I choose to serve. This is outrageous, my mother snapped, abandoning pretense. William built his fortune through the family. That money belongs with those who understand how to maintain and grow wealth, not with someone who thinks finger painting with 5-year-olds is a career. Alexander had remained quiet throughout the exchange, examining the foundation documents with genuine interest rather than immediate rejection. These investment returns are impressive, he noted, especially considering the ethical constraints, and the property portfolio is remarkably diverse. Grandfather believed that wealth could generate both profit and purpose, I explained. Every investment serves a dual function, financial return and positive impact. Alexander, do not tell me you are taking her side, Victoria interjected. I am not taking sides, he replied. I am acknowledging that grandfather created something substantial here, something that clearly mattered deeply to him. My father stood abruptly. This requires legal review. William cannot simply have created a parallel fortune without proper family governance. There must be some provision for oversight. There is oversight, I said calmly. Mine. That was his explicit intention, documented thoroughly and protected legally. You can review everything with your attorneys, but you will find that grandfather left nothing to chance. As the confrontation continued into evening, the family dynamics I had known my entire life played out predictably. My mother alternated between attempting to undermine my confidence and suggesting how she could help guide the foundation with her social connections. My father focused on legal angles to gain control. Victoria openly dismissed the value of the ethical investments compared to traditional Montgomery holdings. Only Alexander showed genuine curiosity about William's vision. While the others argued, he asked thoughtful questions about specific projects the foundation supported. I never realized grandfather cared about these issues, he admitted, as we stepped away from the others to watch the sunset from the garden. We only ever discussed profit margins and expansion strategies. He showed different sides of himself to different people, I said. I think he was trying to be what each of us needed or expected. And what did you need or expect? Alexander asked. Just him. Not his money or his legacy or his business acumen, just his time and wisdom. Alexander nodded slowly. And that is exactly what he gave you, along with the responsibility for his true values. He looked back at our parents still arguing on the terrace. They will never understand this choice. I know, I acknowledged, but I do not need their understanding to honor his wishes. By the time the family departed for their hotel in Monte Carlo, battle lines had been clearly drawn. My parents and Victoria saw Williams Foundation as a resource to be claimed and controlled, while I stood as the obstacle to their ambitions. Alexander remained thoughtfully neutral, caught between family loyalty and respect for Williams' intentions. As Pierre drove them away, Isabella came to stand beside me. Your grandfather faced similar conflicts when he began creating this separate life, she said gently. He always said that wealth reveals character rather than building it. I watched the car's taillights disappear down the winding road, feeling both the weight of the confrontation and a surprising lightness of purpose. For the first time in my life, I had stood my ground against the full force of Montgomery family pressure and remained unshaken. Grandfather chose well, Isabella said, patting my shoulder before returning inside. He saw your strength long before you did. The following morning, I woke early and walked through the villa gardens as the sun rose over the Mediterranean. In the clear light of day, the path forward seemed suddenly obvious. I would not fight my family for control of the foundation. I would simply exercise the control William had already legally ensured. I spent the next week in intensive meetings with the foundation's management team, legal advisors, and project directors. I visited schools funded by foundation scholarships, met with environmental researchers working on Mediterranean conservation, and toured affordable housing developments that combined environmental sustainability with community support services. With each meeting and site visit, William's vision became clearer to me. He had created a legacy based not on accumulation, but on contribution, not on status, but on impact. The foundation's work touched thousands of lives in ways that created opportunity rather than dependency. My family's attempts to challenge William's legal arrangements proved futile. His preparations had been methodical and comprehensive, with multiple layers of protection ensuring that the foundation would remain independent from Montgomery Properties and under my direction. After 2 weeks of failed legal maneuvers, my father called with a different approach. Hannah, the board has discussed the situation and is prepared to offer you a compromise. We can create a position for you within Montgomery Properties as Director of Corporate Social Responsibility, with a generous compensation package and influence over charitable giving. That is very thoughtful, I replied, but I already have a position that allows me to direct $500 million toward positive impact. Why would I trade that for a symbolic role at the family company? Because you are a Montgomery, he answered, as if that explained everything. This separation is unnatural and unnecessary. I disagree. I think it is exactly what the Montgomery name needs, a reminder that wealth brings responsibility beyond self-interest. My mother tried next, appearing unannounced at the villa with shopping bags from Monaco's most exclusive boutiques. Darling, you cannot possibly manage these high-level relationships dressed like a schoolteacher. I have brought a few essentials to help you present properly. Thank you, but I am comfortable with my current wardrobe, I said. The people I am working with care more about actions than appearances. Her smile tightened. Hannah, you have always been stubborn about the wrong things. This foundation could elevate our family's social position tremendously if handled correctly. That is not its purpose. Everything has multiple purposes if you are intelligent enough to see them, she countered. Victoria's approach was predictably direct. This is ridiculous, Hannah. You are way out of your depth. Let the family help before you embarrass yourself and damage grandfather's legacy. Only Alexander showed a genuine interest in understanding rather than controlling. After my family's initial assault failed, he returned alone to the villa, asking thoughtful questions about the foundation's work. I have been thinking about what grandfather was trying to teach us, he said as we walked through the hillside gardens. All these years we thought the family business was his legacy, but maybe that was just the means to create something more meaningful. I think he struggled with that balance his entire life, I replied. The business provided the resources, but it also created a value system he grew to question. Alexander nodded slowly. The more successful we became, the less satisfied he seemed. He stopped walking to face me directly. "I want to understand this side of him, Hannah. Not to take control from you, but to learn what he valued beyond balance sheets." That conversation marked a turning point. While my parents and Victoria continued their campaign to bring the foundation under family control, Alexander began working with me to understand William's vision. He accompanied me to project sites, asked insightful questions during meetings with foundation partners, and gradually developed a genuine appreciation for the work. 3 months after my arrival in Monaco, I made a decision about my future. I would maintain my teaching position in New York, returning to the classroom I loved while commuting regularly to Monaco to oversee the foundation. The villa would remain my European base, with Isabella continuing to manage it in my absence. I established clear boundaries with my family. The foundation would operate independently from Montgomery Properties, but I would consider collaborative projects that aligned with both entities' goals. My parents and Victoria could participate only if they respected the foundation's ethical guidelines and independent governance. "You are making a mistake," my father warned during a tense family dinner in New York. "This separation creates unnecessary complexity." "Sometimes complexity is necessary to protect what matters," I replied. To my surprise, Alexander asked to become formally involved with the foundation, proposing a role focused on developing ethical investment strategies that might eventually influence Montgomery Properties' approach. "I want to build a bridge between these two worlds," he explained. "Not to merge them, but to allow positive influence to flow in both directions." 1 year after William's funeral, I hosted the first annual William Montgomery Foundation Gala at the Villa. The event brought together project partners, beneficiaries, and supporters to celebrate the foundation's work and announce new initiatives. Alexander stood beside me as we unveiled scholarships for underprivileged students pursuing careers in education, environmental science, and community development. My parents and Victoria attended, maintaining a polite public facade while privately continuing to question my leadership. Yet even they could not deny the positive response from Monaco's community and the international recognition the foundation was beginning to receive. As sunset painted the Mediterranean in shades of gold and pink, I found a quiet moment alone on William's favorite terrace overlooking the sea. The weight of responsibility he had placed on my shoulders no longer felt overwhelming but purposeful, a perfect fit for the person I had always been, but struggled to embrace within the family expectations. "He would be proud," Isabella said, joining me with a glass of champagne. "Not just of what you have accomplished, but of who you have remained while doing it." In that moment, I understood the true gift William had given me. Not the money or properties or power, but the opportunity to create meaning beyond material success. While my family had received the possessions they valued, I had received something far more precious: purpose. The path forward would not be without challenges. My parents continued to view the foundation as a family resource they should control. Victoria maintained her distance, occasionally attending events but never fully engaging with the mission. Alexander's bridge-building efforts met resistance from both sides, though he persisted with characteristic determination. Yet with each project funded, each life changed, each positive impact measured, the wisdom of William's choice became clearer. He had recognized in me something the family had always dismissed as impractical idealism, but that he had come to value as essential wisdom: the understanding that true wealth lies not in what we accumulate, but in what we contribute. As I watched the last light fade from the sky, I thought about the children in my kindergarten classroom and the lessons I tried to teach them about sharing and kindness. William had taught me the same lesson on a grander scale, showing that principles do not change with the addition of zeros in a bank account. The small envelope containing a plane ticket that had once seemed like rejection now revealed itself as the most profound expression of trust. While the family received what they wanted, I received what I needed: the chance to become fully myself while continuing William's most meaningful work. Have you ever discovered that what initially felt like rejection was actually someone seeing your true potential? I would love to hear your stories in the comments. And if this journey of discovering true purpose beyond material success resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need this perspective today. Thank you for joining me on this unexpected journey from heartbreak to purpose. Remember that sometimes the most meaningful inheritances aren't things that can be held in your hands, but purposes that fill your heart.